Dr. Elena Carter, a brilliant systems engineer, found herself waking in an alien cell, trapped by beings whose technology and telepathic powers far surpassed anything humanity had ever imagined. Her captors, the Zerth, believed they could break her, extract the secrets of human advancement through force and manipulation. But Elena had other plans. With nothing but her ingenuity and resourcefulness, she would turn their own technology against them, disrupting their ship's power grid and unraveling their carefully constructed mind network. As the Zerth's systems fell apart, Elena didn't just escape. She sent a message to the universe. Underestimating humanity could be the last mistake anyone makes. Elena Carter sat in the cold, metallic cell, her body stiff from hours of tense anticipation. The walls around her were sleek and smooth, almost too perfect, emitting a soft hum that seemed to vibrate beneath her skin. She strained her ears, listening for any sounds, but the silence was almost oppressive. The room felt sterile, almost alive, with an energy that suggested the ship itself was constantly monitoring her. She could feel the weight of her situation pressing down on her, knowing she had no idea where she was or how long she'd been trapped in this strange place. Her mind kept racing as she tried to recall the events leading up to her current predicament. Elena was a systems engineer, accustomed to solving technical problems, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. She had been on a routine mission, working in the asteroid belt, when everything suddenly went black. There had been no warning, no distress signal, no indication that anything was wrong. One moment she was coordinating with her team, and the next she awoke in this unfamiliar, alien environment, disoriented and isolated. The memories were fragmented, but one thing was clear. She was no longer aboard her own ship. Looking around the sterile chamber, Elena tried to discern any useful details that might provide clues about where she was or who had taken her. The walls of the cell were adorned with faint patterns that seemed to pulse gently, almost as if they were alive. A low, rhythmic hum emanated from the infrastructure, and the soft glow from the ceiling illuminated the room, casting long shadows on the floor. The sterile environment made it feel like she was trapped in a giant, high-tech aquarium, her every move potentially monitored by whoever had taken her. She knew that every second she spent in this room was another moment lost in the race to find an escape. Despite the cold, oppressive environment, Elena refused to succumb to panic. She had trained for emergencies, for situations where the odds were stacked against her, and she had learned how to maintain control of her thoughts and actions. Her mind was her most powerful weapon. As she considered her next steps, she recalled her mission objectives before the blackness overtook her. But there was no easy way to piece together what had happened. Only one thing was certain: she had to keep her wits about her. With no immediate answers, Elena resolved to survive, focusing on the small details around her. She knew that the answers she sought were hidden somewhere within the ship, and she would find them, or make them, if it meant escaping alive. As Elena sat in the center of the room, trying to process her situation, the air around her shifted with an unsettling sound. A faint hiss echoed in the distance, growing louder as it approached. Her instincts flared, warning her of the unknown presence drawing near. It wasn't long before the source of the noise revealed itself. A group of tall figures, their silhouettes outlined against the faint glow of the walls. These beings moved with a fluid, almost mechanical precision, their metallic robes shimmering unnaturally as they drew closer. Elena could feel the hairs on the back of her neck rise as they entered her space. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her composure, focusing on maintaining a neutral expression. These figures, the creatures that had captured her, appeared almost alien in their design. Their bodies were elongated, towering above her, and their movements were graceful yet unnerving. Their faces were eerily blank, with no distinct features to identify them, save for the glowing orbs where eyes should have been. The lights that seemed to pulse from their robes matched the rhythm of the hum in the room, suggesting that their appearance was deeply integrated into the technology of the ship. The silence that enveloped them felt almost suffocating, and as they moved closer, Elena could feel a strange pressure building in her head. It was as if her thoughts were being poked and prodded by an invisible force, like someone rifling through her very consciousness. The pressure escalated as the alien beings moved into her personal space, their mental presence growing stronger. Elena quickly realized that this wasn't just an encounter with a physical threat. These beings were capable of telepathy, probing her mind with their mental abilities. The sensation was invasive, uncomfortable, and unnerving. She could feel them trying to extract information from her, searching for answers they expected her to provide. But there was a subtle disconnection in their probing. It wasn't as refined as it should have been. Their mental intrusion, though persistent, lacked precision, which left her with a small sliver of hope. Elena knew that if she could control her thoughts and remain calm, she might be able to prevent them from finding what they wanted. With her thoughts racing, Elena did her best to mask any emotions or memories that could be of interest to her captors. She clenched her fists, fighting back the rising panic, and then spoke, defying the disembodied voice that echoed in her mind. "Who are you?" she asked firmly, her voice a quiet defiance in the face of their overwhelming presence. The question was met with silence, the telepathic link remaining one-sided. The voice, cold and emotionless, finally responded, demanding that she comply. Yet, despite the pressure in her mind, Elena remained defiant. She realized that these creatures, though advanced, were not invincible. They lacked the understanding of humanity's complexity, and their telepathic abilities, though powerful, were not foolproof. She had to use this to her advantage. The alien beings, undeterred by Elena's resistance, seemed to grow increasingly frustrated with their inability to extract the information they wanted. Despite their advanced telepathic abilities, their efforts to penetrate her mind had been met with failure. The pressure in her head had intensified, but Elena had managed to redirect their attention by focusing on trivial, unrelated memories. As they attempted to delve deeper into her psyche, she concentrated on moments from her past, baking cookies with her grandmother, attending high school, debates, and singing along to old songs. The more irrelevant the memories, the harder it became for the invaders to find what they were seeking. This mental distraction seemed to irritate them, their frustration becoming evident through their telepathic probes, yet they couldn't break through. Her smirk betrayed her growing confidence. She had realized something in that moment. The beings were more accustomed to order and efficiency than the chaotic unpredictability of human nature. They lacked the adaptability that humans inherently possessed. Elena's mind was anything but orderly. Her thoughts flitted between memories and emotions, each unrelated and seemingly chaotic to her captors. Yet, to her, it was a shield. The pressure lifted from her mind as they withdrew, clearly baffled by the lack of clarity in her thoughts. It was a small victory, but one that gave her a flicker of hope. Elena had always been taught to never underestimate the power of human unpredictability, and it seemed the alien beings had done exactly that. With their telepathic probing failing, the beings retreated, their movements mechanical and unperturbed as they conferred among themselves in a series of unintelligible clicks. Elena's heart raced, but her mind remained sharp. She understood that in these creatures' arrogance and reliance on their technology, they had overlooked one fundamental thing. The human mind could not be easily categorized or predicted. They might have thought her primitive, but it was that very trait, her adaptability, that made her dangerous. She leaned back, surveying the room around her, absorbing every detail. The sterile, metallic environment offered little comfort, but Elena's trained mind immediately began to analyze her surroundings, searching for any flaw, any weakness. The walls of her cell pulsed faintly, and Elena noted the rhythmic vibration that seemed to permeate the floor. She recognized the pattern as part of the ship's power cycle. The hum echoed in the floor beneath her feet, a steady sound that seemed to coincide with faintly glowing nodes embedded into the corners of the room. These weren't just decorative. They were functional, possibly part of the ship's power system or sensor network. Elena's mind quickly began to formulate a plan. If she could disrupt one of these nodes, it might cause a cascading effect that would ripple through the entire ship's system, potentially giving her the edge she needed. The beings around her may have been technologically advanced, but their rigidity and lack of adaptability to chaos would prove to be their downfall. Elena smiled inwardly. She had just begun to turn the tables. Elena's chance to act came during a physical examination, an opportunity that she had been waiting for. The Zerth led her into a strange chamber filled with hovering instruments that scanned her with beams of light. The sensation was uncomfortable, but it didn't cause any lasting pain. She was aware of every movement they made, her mind constantly calculating the best way to turn the situation to her advantage. As they focused intently on their devices, Elena noticed several small objects scattered across a table near her. Among them were two items that immediately caught her attention: a thin, flexible probe with a metallic tip and a small energy cell, compact but powerful. Her eyes quickly scanned the room to make sure they weren't paying attention to her, and, with a practiced motion, she deliberately shifted her position, knocking a tray to the floor. The moment their focus shifted to retrieve the fallen objects, Elena saw her opportunity. One of the Zerth telepathically commented on her behavior, dismissing it as a result of her primitive clumsiness. They clearly underestimated her, which was exactly what she wanted. Elena moved quickly but subtly, slipping the probe and the energy cell into the sleeve of her jumpsuit, making sure to keep her expression neutral. The moment passed, and the Zerth, too distracted by their own priorities, failed to notice the theft. Elena knew she had secured the two pieces of equipment, but now came the hard part: figuring out how to use them. She was no stranger to tinkering with technology. Her background as a systems engineer had taught her how to see the potential in even the most unlikely objects. These items were the foundation of something much more powerful than they appeared. Back in her cell, Elena began working in earnest, using the dim light emitted by the walls to carefully examine the objects she had taken. The energy cell was unfamiliar, but it seemed to be a self-contained power source, small yet potent. The probe, however, was more interesting. It emitted a faint charge when pressed, and Elena could sense that it had potential. She worked quickly, stripping the insulation from the probe's wire using her teeth, then twisting the exposed ends around the contacts of the energy cell. She knew that the resulting device wouldn't generate a large EMP pulse, but that wasn't necessary. What mattered was creating a small disruption in the power cycle, something that could trigger a chain reaction throughout the tightly integrated systems of the ship. Her fingers worked with precision, her mind focused entirely on the task at hand. As Elena continued to assemble her makeshift EMP device, she thought about her earlier interactions with the Zerth. Their telepathic failure had been the first sign that they had underestimated her. She had caught glimpses of their frustration, their inability to make sense of her mind. But more than that, she had noticed a flicker of something else: curiosity. Despite their dismissive attitude toward humanity, there was an underlying desire to understand. She decided to exploit that. When the Zerth next entered her cell, she feigned confusion and began asking questions about their ship, their technology. At first, they ignored her, but Elena's persistent questioning seemed to unsettle them. One of the Zerth finally responded, its glowing eyes narrowing as it spoke, telling her that she sought knowledge beyond her capacity. She responded with a smirk, suggesting that maybe it was they who didn't know as much as they thought. The tension in the room shifted, and the Zerth retreated, leaving her alone once more. Elena, in that moment, realized just how much they had underestimated her. Her plan was taking shape. The opportunity to put her plan into motion finally came when the Zerth left her alone again. Elena crouched in the corner of her cell, her improvised EMP device hidden beneath her jumpsuit. She had tested it carefully, generating small sparks to confirm it was functional. The pulse it could generate would be minimal, but she didn't need it to be large, just enough to disrupt the power cycle. The key was timing, and she knew it would have to be perfect. The Zerth were meticulous in their behavior, and their overconfidence made them predictable. She could use that against them. As she waited, her mind remained sharp. The hum of the ship's power cycle was constant in the background, and every now and then, the lights in her cell would flicker, almost as if reacting to her thoughts. As the subtle vibrations beneath her feet began to stutter and the lights in her cell flickered erratically, Elena felt the moment was right. She activated the device. The sharp crackle of the EMP was nearly drowned out by the resounding hum of the ship's power grid. For a brief moment, Elena thought she had made a mistake, but then she saw the shimmer of the walls around her distort, like ripples in water. The disturbance didn't go unnoticed. Moments later, the door to her cell slid open, and two of the Zerth entered. Their glowing eyes were pulsing with agitation, and their frustration was palpable, even through the telepathic link. They demanded an explanation for the anomaly. Elena, however, kept her composure. Her expression remained neutral, feigning innocence as if she had no idea what had happened. She didn't hesitate to add, "Maybe your perfect systems aren't so perfect after all." The Zerth hesitated, exchanging unspoken thoughts, and for a moment, their telepathic communication seemed strained. The disruption was clearly affecting their ability to coordinate, and Elena took it as confirmation that her EMP device had worked. The effects had extended beyond her cell, disrupting not just the ship's power grid, but their very ability to communicate with each other. After a brief pause, the Zerth left, still visibly unsettled. Elena quickly sprang into action. She had noticed earlier that one of the power nodes in the corner of the room was slightly exposed. It was a chance to escalate the disruption and make a bigger impact. Using the knowledge she had gleaned from their technology, she pried open the node and connected her EMP device to the exposed circuitry. As her hands moved with practiced precision, she modified the device to deliver a more sustained pulse. Her plan was to disrupt not just the power cycle, but the entire ship's power grid. The Zerth depended on their technology and their mental network to stay coordinated, and Elena knew that if she could interfere with that, the entire ship would descend into chaos. As she worked, Elena noticed something strange. The pressure she had felt during their telepathic probes had disappeared, replaced by a faint static in the air. The mental network that the Zerth relied on seemed to be fraying, unraveling under the strain. It was a promising sign that her plan was succeeding. With the final modification to her device, she triggered the pulse deliberately. The alarms blared throughout the ship, signaling a critical failure. Elena, however, was already prepared. She didn't wait to see what happened next. Instead, she turned her focus to escaping before the Zerth could recover. The alarms blared through the ship, signaling an impending breakdown of the Zerth's systems. The walls of Elena's cell shimmered, then collapsed entirely, revealing the chaotic hallways beyond. She stepped into the corridor, her mind racing with the knowledge that the Zerth were now disoriented and vulnerable. Their usual calm and methodical precision had crumbled into confusion. Elena moved swiftly, using the shadows to stay hidden as she observed the panicked Zerth rushing in different directions, their glowing eyes dimming with the failure of their communication network. It was clear that the disruption she had caused was far-reaching, not just in terms of their technology, but in their ability to coordinate as a species. The pulse she had triggered had done far more than interfere with the ship's power systems. It had severed their telepathic connection, leaving them disjointed and unpredictable. Elena kept her movements deliberate and careful, aware that the window of opportunity she had created was limited. She had to make the most of it. As she moved further down the hallway, she spotted a console, its interface alien but not beyond her capabilities. Her training had prepared her for moments like this, systems that seemed foreign, yet held patterns that could be cracked. Elena bypassed the security protocols, her fingers moving across the interface with confidence. She quickly gained access to the ship's maps, data logs, and communication frequencies, scrolling through the information as it appeared on the screen. One file caught her attention, an analysis of humanity. The Zerth had viewed humans as primitive, unpredictable, and chaotic, but their logs revealed an underlying fear. They couldn't comprehend humanity's rapid evolution and adaptability, traits that defied their rigid understanding of progress. The more Elena read, the more she realized how deeply the Zerth had underestimated humanity. They saw unpredictability as a weakness, but Elena knew better. It was humanity's strength. She quickly uploaded a distortion signal into their communication network, further amplifying the disruption she had already caused. As she did, she embedded a message in their logs, a declaration that would reverberate through the Zerth's systems long after she was gone. You think us primitive because you don't understand us. That's your first mistake. Don't make a second. The message was both a warning and a challenge. a direct reflection of the Zerth's failure to recognize humanity's resilience. Elena didn't need to destroy them. She had already proven her point. She was far more dangerous to them as a symbol of human ingenuity and resistance. With the Zerth in disarray, Elena knew it was time to move on to the next phase of her escape. She had created enough chaos to delay their response, but now she needed to act fast. As she navigated the ship's corridors, she could hear the muffled sounds of their frantic footsteps, but she stayed focused on her goal. The ship's main hangar was her destination, where she could make her final escape. She knew that the Zerth had underestimated the importance of small decisions, like the one that led to her capture. Now, it was time to turn that mistake into her advantage. When she reached the hangar, she saw a flicker of light. A Zerth had managed to reactivate the security systems, but it was too late. The damage she had done to their communication network had delayed their responses long enough. Elena slipped past the sluggish guards and accessed the shuttle bay. Elena moved with purpose as she piloted the shuttle, her hands moving without hesitation as she quickly familiarized herself with the ship's controls. The shuttle responded with remarkable ease, as if the craft had been designed specifically for her. She could feel the ship's systems powering up, the hum of the engines resonating through the small vessel. As she glanced back at the Zerth's enormous craft in the distance, she saw the sensors flicker and fail, a result of the earlier disruption she had caused to their systems. The Zerth, who had once held the upper hand with their technological superiority, were now rendered blind and disoriented. Elena smiled, knowing that her actions had turned their perceived strength into their greatest weakness. They had no way of knowing where she was headed or how to stop her, and that uncertainty would be their undoing. The chaos she had instigated was not just physical, but psychological as well. The Zerth had been so confident in their advanced technology, in their ability to control and dominate, that they had never considered the possibility of facing a species like humanity, unpredictable, adaptive, and resilient. Elena's defiance had shattered their confidence, and now she was in control. She had used their own systems against them, exploiting their rigid thinking and their overestimation of their superiority. As she navigated the shuttle toward the distant human fleet, Elena knew that this was more than an escape. It was a statement, a demonstration of the power of human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. Elena wasn't naive. She knew that her victory was temporary. The Zerth would recover, and they would learn from their mistakes. But for now, she had disrupted their plans and sent a clear message. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was a symbol of human resilience, a living proof that humanity could survive, adapt, and ultimately triumph against those who underestimated them. As the shuttle flew farther from the Zerth ship, she activated the final part of her plan. The distress beacon she had planted would transmit a warning to Earth, alerting them to the Zerth's aggression and to the threat they posed. But it wasn't just a message of escape. It was a declaration of defiance, a signal that humanity would not be silenced, and that the Zerth's attempt to subdue humanity had failed. Elena felt a sense of justice rather than triumph. The Zerth had believed they were in control, but they had underestimated the human spirit. There was no need for destruction or revenge. Her point had been made. Humanity didn't need to conquer to win. They simply needed to be underestimated. As the shuttle descended toward the human fleet, she glanced back one last time at the fading Zerth ship. The chaos she had caused was irreversible, and their belief in their own superiority had crumbled. Elena knew that her message had been received, loud and clear. Next time, don't make the same mistake. Elena's final steps were calculated and deliberate as she moved through the disarrayed corridors of the Zerth ship, using the confusion she had created to her advantage. The Zerth, once organized and precise, now scurried in every direction, their usual calm shattered. The chaos around her made it clear that their system was unraveling, and it was this breakdown that Elena had engineered with careful precision. She knew the disruption she had caused wasn't just physical. It was psychological as well, shaking the very foundation of the Zerth's confidence. Their perception of control had been shattered, and their rigid reliance on advanced technology had faltered in the face of her ingenuity. As she navigated through the mess, Elena's focus remained sharp. and she continued to exploit the opening the chaos provided. She made her way to a console, one of the few places still operational despite the turmoil. The interface was alien to her, yet its design revealed patterns that Elena quickly deciphered. The training she had received as a systems engineer kicked in, and she bypassed the basic security protocols with ease, gaining access to vital ship systems. Data logs, maps, and communication frequencies began to scroll before her eyes. In the midst of this, one file caught her attention, a detailed analysis of humanity, written by the very beings who had abducted her. The analysis was damning. It showed just how little the Zerth understood about humanity. They labeled humans as primitive but unpredictable, something they could not fathom or control. Yet, there was an underlying fear in the report, a fear of humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and survive. The Zerth, in their arrogance, had failed to see the strength of humanity's potential. Instead of seeing a weakness, they had simply failed to grasp the depth of human ingenuity. This revelation reinforced Elena's belief that the Zerth had made a grave mistake by underestimating her species. She knew that their failure to recognize the value of human adaptability would be their undoing. With this insight in mind, Elena took her next steps with purpose. She uploaded a distortion signal into the Zerth's communication network, amplifying the disruption she had already caused. As she did so, she left behind a message in their logs, one that would make it clear to the Zerth that their assessment of humanity was gravely flawed. "You think us primitive because you don't understand us. That's your first mistake," she wrote, knowing that the Zerth would have no choice but to confront the truth of her words. The ship systems were spiraling into disarray, and Elena knew her actions were now irreversible. The Zerth were no longer in control. The tables had turned, and they would have to reckon with the fact that humanity was not the weak, easily dominated species they had assumed. Elena knew that the window of opportunity she had created would not last long. The chaos that had erupted in the ship's corridors would soon subside, and the Zerth would regroup, likely intensifying their efforts to track her down. But for now, she had the advantage, and she moved swiftly through the now disordered hallways, her focus unwavering. The once dominant Zerth were no longer acting with their usual precision. The EMP had disrupted their technology, scrambled their communication network, and created an opening for her to exploit. Every step she took brought her closer to the final phase of her escape. There was no time to waste. This chance could disappear at any moment. Her path took her to a central area of the ship, a location that housed the main navigation and control systems. Elena's mind raced as she accessed a nearby console, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. Despite the alien design, she was able to make sense of the structure. The Zerth had relied too heavily on their technology, assuming their systems were impenetrable, and in doing so, they had overlooked a simple fact. Their systems, like all systems, had flaws. Elena knew that once she had control of the navigation systems, she could reroute the ship to a nearby human fleet, sending it directly into their path. This was her final move, her last gamble to strike a decisive blow. She managed to override the control protocols and set the ship's course toward the human fleet, sending the Zerth vessel on a path that would bring it within range of Earth's forces. The Zerth, for all their arrogance and technological superiority, had failed to account for humanity's unpredictability, and that very quality was about to lead to their downfall. Elena's calculated risk was now in motion. The ship, once inextricably bound to its alien captors, was now on a course that would deliver it into the hands of her people. It was a move that would defy the Zerth's assumptions and, in doing so, change the course of the conflict. As Elena watched the ship's systems flicker and hum, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had outsmarted the Zerth, exploited their arrogance, and used their own technology against them. Her actions had not only allowed her to escape, but had set into motion a series of events that would bring her home. She had not needed to destroy the Zerth or engage them in direct conflict. Instead, she had disrupted their most trusted systems, leaving them vulnerable. Now, with the ship on its course toward the human fleet, there was no turning back. The Zerth would face the consequences of their underestimation. And as Elena prepared to leave the ship behind, She knew that humanity would not soon forget the lesson learned through her ingenuity and resolve. As Elena made her way toward the shuttle bay, her heart raced with the urgency of the situation. The ship's interior was now filled with the sound of disarray. The Zerth, disoriented and distracted by the cascading failures in their systems, were unable to coordinate their efforts to stop her. She moved with determination, knowing that every second counted. The shuttle bay was her final destination, the last obstacle between her and freedom. The Zerth had underestimated her in every way, but now, with their technology in tatters, she had the opportunity to escape. It was a narrow window, but one she had carefully set into motion with every disruption, every calculated move. Upon reaching the shuttle bay, Elena quickly accessed a nearby console. The familiar hum of the ship's systems, now failing in parts, sent a sense of calm over her. She had no doubt that the Zerth were scrambling to regain control, but it was too late. She slid into the cockpit of one of the smaller shuttlecraft, a vessel she knew would allow her to slip away unnoticed, at least for a time. The controls, though alien, responded in ways that felt almost intuitive. She was quick to familiarize herself with the basic systems, bypassing the ship's security measures with ease. It was a relief to know she had this skill. Her knowledge and adaptability had carried her this far, and they would continue to serve her in the final steps of her escape. As she powered up the shuttle's engines, Elena could feel the tremors of the larger Zerth vessel as it rocked from the damage she'd caused. The lights in the hangar flickered, and the hum of its power systems fluctuated. She smiled grimly, knowing that the Zerth had no way of tracking her movements. They had failed to contain the damage in their communications network, and the shuttle's stealth capabilities were enough to keep her hidden for now. The damage she had inflicted earlier was the perfect cover for her departure. As the shuttle's thrusters roared to life, Elena guided it toward the opening hangar doors. The Zerth ship behind her was a towering, formidable presence, but it was now a shadow of its former self, unable to track or predict her. As she broke free from the Zerth ship's gravitational pull, Elena took one final glance at the vessel. It had been a symbol of their superiority, an intimidating force that had captured her. But now it was nothing more than a reminder of their arrogance. She activated the distress beacon, sending out a message that would travel far and wide. The beacon would reach Earth, and in doing so, it would deliver not only her survival, but a declaration to the Zerth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Elena felt no urge for revenge. What mattered now was the message. The Zerth had miscalculated their advantage over her, and through that mistake, they had given humanity an opportunity to act. As the shuttle sped toward the human fleet, Elena's final thought was simple. They would learn their lesson, and they would never forget what had happened today. Elena's escape had been a calculated risk, but the uncertainty of the moment filled her with a sense of urgency. She had prepared for this escape for days, carefully orchestrating every move, every disruption to the Zerth's systems. Now, as she hurtled through space toward the human fleet, she felt a quiet thrill of triumph. However, it was not the rush of victory she expected. Instead, there was a sense of justice in her actions, as though she had finally proven that humans could not be so easily subdued. The Zerth had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and survive, and they had paid the price for that mistake. As she watched the glowing mass of the Zerth ship grow smaller in the distance, she reflected on the journey that had led her here. She had been just another scientist, minding her business in deep space, when the Zerth had abducted her. They had believed they could break her, force her to give them the knowledge they sought, but they had failed to understand the core of human resilience. Their assumption that humans were simply primitive and chaotic had blinded them to one fundamental truth. Humanity thrived in adversity. It was in these moments, when everything seemed impossible, that humans found ways to overcome even the most insurmountable challenges. The distress beacon she had activated would not just mark her escape, but also send a message to Earth. It was a warning to humanity, but more than that, it was a declaration of their power and potential. Elena knew that the message would be received by the right people, those who would understand the significance of what she had done. It was not just about the technology or the strategy she had used to outwit the Zerth. It was about showing the world that humanity could withstand any threat, no matter how advanced or seemingly invincible. In her mind, this moment would mark a turning point, not just for her survival, but for humanity's future. As the shuttle descended toward the human fleet, Elena's thoughts shifted to the broader implications of her actions. She had been a hostage, a victim of the Zertha's overconfidence, but now she was more than that. She had become a symbol of resistance, a reminder that humans were not to be underestimated. The Zerth had assumed that their superior technology and telepathic powers would make them invincible, but it was their failure to recognize human ingenuity that had led to their downfall. Elena smiled to herself, knowing that her escape was not just a personal victory, but the first step in a larger movement. She had shown the Zerth that humanity could fight back, not with brute force, but with intellect, creativity, and the unwavering will to survive.